The film begins at a halfway house in London, Britain. Little Sophie, Ruby Barnhill, is alert at what she calls the witching hour, which is the point at which the boogeyman appears. She peers through a window and sees four men shakily wasting time in the roads. Sophie hollers at them and takes steps to call the police on them. Sophie strolls back toward her bed and hears one more sound from an alternate window. She sees felines going through the rubbish and thumping over a receptacle. An extremely enormous hand gets the canister. Sophie sees a monster man, imprint Rylance, strolling by. She wheezes, and he hears her. The monster puts his hand in the window and selects Sophie from her bed. He slips through the roads undetected and runs as far as possible back to his home in Monster Country. The Goliath, called the enormous accommodating monster of BFG for short, drops Sophie onto a table while he begins to slash up a gross-looking vegetable called a snoscumber. Sophie thinks the BFG will eat her, however he says he doesn't eat youngsters or individuals. BFG says he took Sophie to hold her back from spreading expression of a Goliath locating for dread that the people might chase him down. BFG additionally talks with a surprising jargon, his good and bad is both ways, for instance. After Sophie comprehends that he is harmless, BFG peruses her a book and she nods off. He then, at that point, goes to his assortment of dreams that he's caught in containers. Sophie dreams that she has been taken by a significantly greater Goliath that eats her while BFG remains somewhere far off, unfit to do anything. At the point when she awakens, BFG makes sense of that he gave her the fantasy. BFG drinks a bubbly green beverage called Frapscottle, which has bubbles going down rather than up. It likewise causes witzpoppers, in a real sense touchy farts. Minutes after the fact, a similar monster from Sophie's fantasy, Fleshlampeter, Jermaine Lenient, enters BFG's home. He and the other far taller Goliaths every now and again insult BFG and refer to him as Pipsqueak since he is altogether more modest contrasted with the rest. Sophie stows away in the snoscumber, which Fleshlampeter gets. He almost takes a chomp until BFG reminds him he can't stand vegetables. Fleshlampeter takes the Frapscottle and leaves. BFG takes the goo-shrouded Sophie to clean herself. He gives her a few extra garments from a heap for her to put on. She puts on a red coat that had a place with one more youngster that BFG had gotten to know until he was eaten by one of different monsters. BFG then shows Sophie every one of the sorts of dreams he has gathered. BFG gets ready to take Sophie to the slope where he gathers dreams, however he needs to pass Fleshlampeter and his band of Goliath thugs as they rest. BFG and Sophie slip away, yet BFG is gotten by one of the Goliaths. Sophie conceals inside a truck. The Goliaths start throwing BFG around like a football. They stop when it starts descending, as they are alarmed by it. Sophie startlingly forsakes a cover, which Fleshlampeter finds and sniffs, knowing there's a human around. BFG and Sophie come to the incline. They bounce into a lake that conveys them into the space of dreams. One explicit dream zooms by BFG, and he can't get it. Sophie sorts out some way to get it, and BFG says it is her dream. The two go into London so BFG can show how he gives people dreams. BFG places a dream into his trumpet and gives a youngster a dream where he gets a call from the US President. Right when BFG comprehends Sophie's broad was surely found by various beasts, he feels it's at this point not okay for her to stay with him since various youths that he managed were in the inn taken and eaten by Fleshlampeter and his partners. BFG returns Sophie to the shelter. Around night time, she calls to him. He hears her and decides to bring her back. The beasts by and large burst into BFG's home and begin annihilating the spot, permitting his dreams to run free as they break things. BFG has had enough, and he drives them off with fire and water. Sophie devises an idea when she sees a portrayal of Sovereign Elizabeth, Penelope Wilton, in BFG's home. Together, they think of a horrendous where the Goliaths are taking and eating youths, whereupon the Sovereign will meet Sophie as she sits on the windowsill. After the dream is made up, the two head to Buckingham Palace and spot the dream in the Sovereign's head. She has the terrible dream and stirs, alerted her housekeeper Mary, Rebecca Passageway, and head worker Mr. Tibbs, Rafe's Fall. As the Sovereign portrays the dream, Mary sees a paper title referring to the evaporating of young people in London. Sophie then, at that point, gets the news out about her presence for them three at the window. Since the sovereign has recently seen this in her dream, she allows it and a while later recognizes Sophie is with BFG. Sophie calls for him, yet he is hesitant about rising. Mr. Tibbs calls the distinguished guards out as BFG branches out. The sovereign orders Tibbs to have them stand down, which they do. Sophie formally familiarizes everyone with BFG, and she tells the sovereign they need her help. The sovereign has her staff set up a banquet for Sophie and BFG. BFG is bright to eat some unique choice from snozzcumbers for once. The sovereign obtains her champions after Sophie figures out that the beasts in her dream are authentic and that they are to be certain taking young people. The plan is to head into Beast Country and catch the contemptible Goliaths. BFG then, pours 2 or 3 glasses of fropscottle for the sovereign, Tibbs, some staff people, and, shockingly, the canines. Perilous farts follow. BFG and Sophie believe that the Goliaths will be resting so they can lay out terrible dreams into their heads. Regardless, BFG deserted his trumpet. Sophie runs into the field with a compartment of terrible dreams and permits with a container of bad dreams and allows them to fly into the monsters' mouths. Just Fleshlum Peter isn't impacted. He gets ready to assault, however the fighters show up in time and catch him and the other Goliaths. They are dropped onto a far-off island where they are compelled to eat only snozzcumbers until the end of their days. Eventually, Sophie tracks down a home in the sovereign's castle under Mary's consideration. She describes on a fantasy she says she had where she saw BFG's home, which currently has a nursery where he develops better vegetables, regardless a couple of snozzcumbers. She opens the window and gets down on, "Great morning, BFG." In his home, he hears her and he grins.